Looks like we are live. Yippee.
Great. Yeah.
Do you want to do the usual intro?
So we are live. Thanks everyone for joining the OpenJS Foundation's standards meeting, standards team meeting. Today is October 22nd. And we meet every other week. We have an agenda in the standards repo in the OpenJS Foundation org on GitHub. It is issue number 34. And yeah, we've got a few things here on the agenda, and so we'll get started.
Okay, cool. So the first thing on our agenda is TC53 participation, and that is, as the co-chair of TC53, I think I can probably speak to that. But I believe, let me pop into that issue. I think that Donovan actually proposed it. So we had a good discussion on this at a meeting maybe last month, back in September. We need to simply register the OpenJS Foundation as a member to the TC53 committee. So the OpenJS Foundation is already a member of ECMA International, so there's no additional like membership agreements between the foundation and the and ECMA to make, but we do have to let ECMA know that the foundation intends to send a delegate, and so I think that Donovan would be a great delegate here. He's very active in node bots and Johnny 5 and those kinds of JavaScript based IoT projects. He's awesome. He's not on the calls, and he did not pay me to say that. But the other thing that was raised was a concern that TC53, as a relatively new committee, does not have the invited expert policy and the IPR commitment form that TC39 does. So we do need to get that in place. So
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Joy? The TC53 doesn't have what?
Its own invited experts form. So when TC39 invites somebody or to come speak to or contribute to the committee proceedings, we require them to sign a form that basically says that they are able to contribute the materials that they're contributing. Like they're not contributing any copyright or patentable materials on behalf of their employer that they aren't allowed to contribute. So it's it's like a provenance concern. So TC53 doesn't have that. It also hasn't really started producing any materials yet. I expect it to happen in the next year, though. We're starting to kind of shore up items that will go into a spec, so that will become more of an issue in the future.
Okay.
So the TC53 is meeting in person next week here in Boston, and I am happy to bring this up. I believe Donovan's going to be here too, so he and I can tackle this and report back to the group after the next face-to-face for TC53.
Great. That's an excellent update. You may want to just peek at the notes and see if I captured what you were saying well.
Cool, yeah.
Great. I guess we'll kind of tag team here, Jory. So next up is, does anyone have anything more on TC53 that they'd like to talk about, discuss, or have questions? No? So moving on, then the next agenda item is document governance for the standards working group. I can open up this issue number 19. If I remember correctly, no, okay, I don't remember correctly. I thought that Sandil had started working on some of this, but I don't see anything attached here. So Jory, you open this if you want to take over.
Sure. Number 16, document governance.
Number
okay,
19.
number
Oh,
19.
yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah.
So this issue was opened after we had a really lively conversation, and by that I mean like positive and productive and fruitful conversation about how to proceed with the making of this group as, you know, a group that can execute work delegated to it by the CPC and make decisions about how to proceed in this space without necessarily having to go back through CPC proposal processes. So it was recommended by Miles actually to start on a governance document or to describe, you know, the process for joining, the process for how we make decisions, and the scope of the work we would do here, so that we can point to these artifacts as, you know, evidence it's an open and functioning group that can operate in conjunction with the CPC on standards related matters. That is the background context, which I'm only providing because it's been a while since we have met. And there's also, I think, some newer folks. Sindil did work on a PR, that's PR number 22.
Yeah, I'm just linking to that. Yeah. So basically, I think Miles had a comment on that, stating that he wants to get an approval on the meeting after it's recorded, and probably we can move forward with that. And there were like few comments. I think I have addressed those comments, but it's again open. Sorry for the noise in the background.
No worries. So Sindel, are you waiting on like, I guess and I guess I could click through and look at this too. What are we blocked on? Just like how do we decide to merge this, or whether we decide to merge this?
I think it's waiting for an acceptance from all the team members. I think most of the team members has accepted it, so we can go ahead and merge it, and then probably if we have any iterations, we can do on top of that.
I mean, at this point, this has been open for how long?
A couple of months. It's
Yeah.
on 20. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got several approvals. I mean, as long as you think you've addressed any comments that are outstanding, I think we should land this.
I agree.
Yeah, I do agree. So we can land this thing. And for access to the repo, do I have to raise a issue, or how does it work?
Do we
Yeah,
need
looks like I don't have right access.
Oh, snap. Let me see what I got. Yeah, okay. I should make a team here, huh?
Sounds good.
All right, I'll tell you what, I'll do that right now. Standards, okay, who is 9 members? So there's 2 pending. Who's pending? Okay, cool. So there's already a team. That's great. It's just that y'all aren't on it yet. And in a moment, you will be. Okay. I think this was maybe something we made like during the collab summit last year. Okay, so you're
no excuses, Joy.
No excuses. We're sick of it. All right, cool. All right, so now y'all have been added. And you should have maintenance access to that repository.
Yay.
Great.
Sorry about that.
No worries. We had a couple people join the call too, not that long ago. So thanks for joining. I think it was Richard and Emily.
We need to add our names too. Don't forget to add your name to the present list.
Yeah. Great. All right. So considering this issue number 19, number one, do we think that PR landing addresses issue 19, or do we leave this open and iterate on overall governance for the standards working group? And I think it seems to me to make sense to leave this open, and we should all take a look at the PR and see what's missing and iterate on it, or does anybody know if these questions are addressed?
I think this would actually be good to close, because I would like to see anything that arises following the merger of our governance.md document, like that should be specific, like, oh, well, the specific problem is we need a process for X. And that's what, so I would be +1 to closing issue 19.
All right, let's do it. I'll just put a quick comment in there, unless somebody's jumping on it already. Resolved by number 22. Close and comments. And I will merge this pull request, unless somebody else is already doing it.
Nope.
Squash and merge. Done.
Done. Yay.
Progress.
It's a day of celebration for the foundation.
Yeah. Great. All right, cool. So then we did that, and we did the other thing. I'm getting back to our notes here. So that was issue 19. Merged 22 and closed ticket issue. Great. So moving on then, the next agenda item is define and document the onboarding process for the representative. This is issue number 14. Sendil opened this, I believe, on August 13th, I believe, out of one of the meetings that we had. It doesn't look like there's been any work on this. Do we want to discuss this? Does anyone want to take it on? What are folks' thoughts?
So let me go. Sorry, somebody. So we started.
I'll read the,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to read the descriptor, but you go.
No, you do it.
So the description says the onboarding document will make it clear to anyone who will represent the standards committee. The document should list down, but not limited to, roles and responsibilities of the representative, things that they should take into consideration and or know, projects that are included, and how to collaborate between them. And then need to define the easy onboarding process that will be clear for anyone who will be a representative. And I think this was born out of some conversations that we had as to, what are the qualifications for being a representative, and what are the concerns that we should consider in onboarding someone?
I guess we can discuss on the issue number 13 before this. Would that make sense? Because that is the initial issue that kind of forms the responsibilities.
Yes, and this is on the agenda as well. So, okay. I felt like we were missing a step, so thanks for pointing this out, Sindil. So this kind of is the first step, define and document requirements for the standards representative, which would then, then we could work on the onboarding aspect.
Yeah.
Is
So
that
there is
related to PR21?
yes, that is related to PR21. Yep.
Great. So do you want to give us an update on the status of this PR, Sindil?
Yes, sure. So, it's just an initial draft and documentation of whatever we think as a responsibility for a standards person who's there. So I just written a few things that we have discussed on the meeting and also added a few more things, and there were a few comments on that. I think I addressed those comments, but it was like 2-3 months now. So if we have anything new, then probably we can add some comments over there, or else we can go ahead and merge it, and then iterate on the document.
Okay.
I feel like we did a pretty good job sort of enumerating thoughts and expectations and, all that. So I'm +1 to merge and iterate. Like, I feel like some of this stuff is we'll just let, stay open for a while, and I want to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm more in favor of, moving forward, progress and building upon what we have. Do you feel like, I was reading through Miles' comments and you responded, Sindil, do you feel like you captured what Miles was talking about here, and if there's any add-on stuff we can add on later, do you think?
Yeah, the basic thing, Miles' comment is basically on governance. He wants to add a governance before this thing goes into the picture. So I added a governance on the very next day. So that was merged. So we have some governance model for this PR to be approved. So once we have that structure, then we can merge this one also and then iterate on this. I think that's basically the crux of what Miles wants to do.
Great. All right. So if I understand correctly, then we're good with merging this puppy. I think it is National Dog Day, so.
So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. I will squash and merge. And so then do we believe that issue number 13 can be resolved? Is that covered?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Sindil?
keeping in, I would say, what is Sindil? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can close issue number 13 and then iterate.
Okay. Done. Excellent. Okay, so then that brings us back to issue number 14 in terms of the onboarding process, right? I mean, that's not necessarily captured in pull request 21. So that would be a next step.
Yes, that would be the next step. And the major question relies around that is like wearing the project hat. Like, for example, how can we resolve a conflict that comes between the project that we support and also the benefit of OpenJS standards? So I think that's one of the main things that is lingering around. I think we need a clarity on that stuff before we move towards that.
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again? I couldn't quite hear you.
Yeah, so before we do something with that issue or create a PR or could do that, like we need to have a clarity on how to elect that particular representative and how can we educate them about wearing different hats when they are attending on behalf of standards.
Yeah, I think that was a big open question for us, which is, when we have these situations where we want to be able to send an individual who maybe they work at Google and Google is already a member of that company, but they're there on behalf of the OpenJS Foundation, and maybe they work on a specific project inside the OpenJS Foundation, like what kind of guidance do we want to provide them? Because we want to make it, you know, just more comfortable for them to wear those multiple hats, as Sindil said.
So is that something we need to capture in documentation somewhere?
I mean, if I recall correctly, like the group had kind of hit a point where we didn't want to discourage people from coming to participate and representing the standards group just because they were part of an organization that was already a member. And so I think we do need to document somewhere that it's okay. You know, it's okay if you're a member of these other organizations. It's also okay if you're not, you know. But that's
yeah, I almost feel like that should be like right out in front on the README. You know, maybe elsewhere as well, but like, you know, people come to this repository to learn more about the work that we're doing here. Like right up front, we should be encouraging folks to join in if they have an interest, and you know, that could be a good spot to say, you know, to kind of make that that clear.
Yeah, I do agree that we should be explicit on that terms, and that's the main reason why we haven't filled anything out now. But explicit to an extent of what, like, if a person who's representing a company X goes on behalf of OpenJS Standard, what he or she should do, or do we have to document that thing, or we can just leave it like, say, you have to support for OpenJS Standard, or you have to talk on behalf of OpenJS Standard. So whether we have to be explicit on that terms, I think that was a basic question that we had, whether we have to be explicit on that term or just implicitly implied. So people take justice and people talk about it.
One question that came up to me came up when in similar situations before was kind of access to sensitive information. So when I was working for Google Security until fairly recently, you know, involving myself in open source security issue triage might have introduced a conflict between my reporting requirement, reporting duty to Google, and a requirement to keep bugs under embargo until they can be, you know, kind of safely disclosed. And so you know, maybe a little bit of thought about what are the sources of you know, sensitive information that we deal with, and kind of call those out early as well.
I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, one thing I'm thinking about is, should we have like a member's expectations document in the repo, and that's where we could, you know, call some of these things out and then link to it from the README, you know, encourage participation and link to any sort of guidance around that.
Yeah, maybe just, you know, calling out, here's things you might want to check with your friendly neighborhood lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Internal.
I do agree with that. We need to have an explicit document because that clears out most of the things.
I'm just taking a minute to pull up what we have for the cross-project council in terms of member expectations. And I'll share it here with the group in the chat. Follow the code of conduct, opinions, decisions. Yeah, I mean, we may want to even just have a member expectations document that says we follow the, you know, cross-project council member expectations, And then here are some other things you may want to consider in working in the standards working group based on, different people's experience.
I mean, that's a good point though, too, that Mike is making, which is like, we can't, if an individual, say, doesn't realize that perhaps they're representing the foundation might put them in a position to be in a conflict of interest, like perhaps in the member expectations here, like we are expecting you to have talked with your employer and understand, and communicate the bounds, that you may have to operate in. Like, I mean, I just wasn't even thinking about Mike's use case, or Mike's case, for example. Like that, and that's not something I think we have in the CPC member expectations document.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking of it as more like extended, like, generally speaking, we abide by the CPC's membership expectations. Here are some additional considerations that you may have in participating in the standards working group. But I'd like to phrase that in a way that says, we encourage you to be involved. We welcome your participation. But before you, you may want to check out points X, Y, and Z to make sure that, you don't find yourself in any trouble. Does that make sense? I mean, maybe I could even, draft a straw man PR, and Mike, if you have particular experience, you could make a suggestion as to what the language might look like, or if anyone else wants to chime in.
I'm happy to help draft or review.
And again, I'm all for keeping it simple and making progress and iterating on that. So this could just be a good starting point.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just taking a note here for myself. No, Joy, if you want to take over and move on to the next issue,
Yep.
I'll take a couple of notes here for myself.
Okay, cool. So let's moving on to the next issue. We are on to issue number 6, which is the standards related travel budget clarification. Opening this up. We discussed a plan for 2020. We discussed making a plan for 2020. This is my last note to myself on this, apparently, and going to the board there for budget requests this fall. It is now the fall, solidly, and I do think that that topic of 2020 budget is very much going to be happening very soon, because we're at basically the end of October. So the board will vote by December on its 2020 budget plan. What I think was possibly very helpful to exploring this was the calendar of events that we might want to send people to. And that is also documented in a pull request number 28. Where we've added quite a few events for 2020 and locations, but it's not assumed that we will send someone to all of these events. It's just simply that these are places where we might want to send folks. I think for sure we're looking at or I think for sure we should think about asking for budget to send people to TPAC, which is the W3C's working meetings, and then also for budget to send a person to the TC39 meetings. And that seems like the lowest, or not lowest, but the most reasonable, and I think also kind of an extension of what we've already been doing. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I wonder too, a bunch of us will probably already be going to some of these meetings, but if we have an elected representative and can send them, that would be great too.
Yep, that makes sense to me. But Jory, we have a comment there, and do you want to include those things? CSS word group, working group.
Oh yeah, we can add those in. I just saw those just now actually, so I'm happy to add those to the pull request, and then we can merge the whole thing in. The calendar was simply for informational purposes, and I hope that's clear, that it's not meant to be taken as like a list of all of the events that the group intends to go to.
Yeah.
Do
you think that
language too? I was going to say add that little bit of language as well, just to be clear in the PR.
Okay. Go ahead, Sindel. You were going to ask a question.
No, I was about to say the same, so it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can add, when I add these in for Brian, I can update that. But should we put out a call to like the broader CPC community and see who among us we're already planning to attend these events, or like what do we want to do to kind of, if anything, to raise?
Yeah, I mean, I think a simple issue asking for folks to share what events they may be attending, those standards events, and you could make a comment for each event, and people could, thumbs up, thumbs down, smirk, or whatever it is for not sure, and see if we can get an informal poll that way, or what do you suggest?
Well, I was just thinking that we probably would want to, because one thing is like this calendar just has been in existence on our standards repo. So it seems like the first obvious thing to do is maybe just open an issue on the CPC repo and just say, hey, we created this, and if there are any events you think we should add, or if there are events you're planning to attend, and maybe that's a column or something that we can add to the calendar as well. Jory will be there on behalf of such and such organization, for example. That would be good to know too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, that seems easy enough. Easy enough. Let's see. Okay. Does that may have been our last issue, and it looks like it was. Okay. So that's how we'll get started there, and then I think the other thing, just on the board budget piece, maybe after our next meeting we can talk about if there's a number that we want to propose as a standards related travel budget for 2020. All right. I don't see anything else. Is there any other business we would like to?
Can we also touch upon the issue 32?
Issue 32. 32. OSI affiliate membership.
OSI.
Yeah.
For me, it looks super interesting, and I think it also makes sense to add the group towards that. But I'm open for thoughts and concerns that if you have anything, or else we can start doing that.
Yeah, I'm actually not really sure where the decision would lie here. I feel like this, I mean, I think unless there's any like buddy that would have a gut reaction that we shouldn't do this, I would think that the decision to join as an affiliate member would actually lie with the board. Do you think, is that this way you would interpret this too, Joe, and everyone else? I mean, because I don't think this group has the power to bind the organization to anything.
And I'm even trying to figure out what the standards angle is here. Like, should we be discussing it here? Should we discuss it at CPC? Should it be discussed at the board?
It probably is worth discussing at the CPC as well, because what we're talking about is like potentially aligning our brand and philosophy and ethos with that of the OSI. And, you know, maybe people don't want to do that or don't think we should do that. So that would be something that obviously affiliates more with like a branding and like marketing concern, but from like a standards perspective, the OSI maintains the open source definition and the licenses, which are approved open source licenses. And as long as like our groups aren't running out and saying like, we actually define that, you know, like I don't see why there would be any conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Or as long as we're not saying, actually, we disagree with the open source definition. I don't think anybody.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this. I just wonder what next steps are in terms of our internal deliberation.
Can we link this to CPC then, and then probably discuss in the next meeting, and then if we want, we can take it to the board?
That sounds good to me.
Agreed.
Okay.
Would you like to open that issue, Sandil, and add the cross-project council agenda label?
Yep. Yeah, sure. I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thanks for highlighting this this issue.
Yeah, I totally skipped over that. Sorry. All right.
Excellent.
Any other business?
None here.
Nope.
Groovy. Okay. Well, we've got a lot of stuff to follow up on, and I'm excited about that. And I'm excited to be having these meetings again regularly because we were all traveling last month. So it's good to hear everybody.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got a little bit of progress here, merged some PRs, closed some issues. Good.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. See you all.
All right. Bye.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah.